Howdy, folks. WebdriverIO provides us a call method. What this method does is allow us to execute asynchronous actions within our test scripts. And the command itself is treated like a synchronous function. If you recall, we've been running all our tests synchronously, and we've been doing that by setting in our config file the sync to true. So we don't have to worry about asynchronous actions. So let's kind of give an overview. When we do something like this, foo, get text, it's behind the scenes, it's actually asynchronous. But what WebDriver does for us is it wraps it, it's actually called a fiber, and a fiber method that allows us to not have to worry about it. So we can assume that when we get the data from here, that if we go to this line here, this line will not be executed until this is completely finished and the promise is resolved. This is all done behind the scenes for us, which is nice, so we don't have to worry about it. But sometimes we need to reach out to like third-party apps, like an API maybe, to set up data or to mock data, somehow stage our environment. So we need to be able to make sure that we can call a method here and make sure that that method is completely finished when we get down to code down here. So let's do that now. All right, so browser.call just accepts a callback. So what we're going to do, okay, let's go for an example first. So let's go over to Axios. Axios it's an HTTP client for browser and node. You'll see a lot of front-end applications do this. What they do is essentially, sometimes you need to get a list of users. And what the Axios will do is it allows you to send an API call to a server somewhere and get users back. So you'll see, to do that, you'll do like axios.get, and then you got to do like .then. What the .then does is means the promise has been resolved. Or if you're using ES6, you can do async await. What you can do is do await axios.get. So we don't want to have to do that. So that's where the browser.call comes into play. So let's fake something out. Let's create like a fake API response. So we can do browser.call. And the first parameter is just a callback function. And we're just going to create a fake promise. We could assume that this is from like Axios, but we can just do you don't really need to worry about what's going on here. I'm just creating a fake API call essentially. And we'll set it to wait for 3 seconds. And then we'll resolve. And then this could be some output from our API call. So you can think of it as that. So what call does is so let's say we needed this. Let's get the data. Let's get output. So we have the output here. We need to use that output in our test now. So we need to make sure that this call is completely done before we hit code. So let's just say, let's set the value. So let's go like example.set value, which we set to the output of this command here. So what we have to make sure is that when this is not executed before this is done. So let's just console the output to see if we actually get what is in our API call here. So let's try that out now. See if this works. All right. And we did. Output from the API call. You see how that took about 3 seconds because this essentially stops execution of the script until this is completely resolved. So if we did like, I don't know, let's see. Well, let's see if an example of if we were to use Axios. If you look at Axios, it's Axios.get. So if we were to actually make a true API call, we would do something like this. Get users or something. So that's in a real world example. That's something you would do, or maybe you would do like a post users to post new users or something like that. So we can do that. So we just need to, like, when we get the users, we got to make sure that it is done by the time it gets here. If we didn't use browser.call, let's go back to what we had. So I see this come up quite often, is people will try to do a synchronous request without browser.call in WebdriverIO, and it's not working like they expected, because they'll just do you'll do something like, let's actually abstract this out a little bit to a function. So let's just do that so we have it in a function. So people will do that, and then they'll log the output. The problem is, if you watch, this should throw an error, or maybe not throw an error, but you'll get weird data. We'll gotta define output first. So you see here, promise pending. I see this happen a lot. The problem is because this does not stop execution here. When we just call fake Axios, immediately, right after that, the output is still being generated. So like it's waiting 3 seconds. So this output is not being generated. So that's why we need the browser.call. Also, you could do, I see people do that then, which is perfectly acceptable. But the problem is you're going to also, so then your output is here. But the problem with this, like inside of then, the promise is resolved, but it's still hitting this before all of this is done. So you can't get your data that way. So you want to do browser.call when you can. I've probably gone into a little bit too much of how promises work. So hopefully you're not too confused about that, but mainly just use browser.call. A lot of times you're going to be using APIs to do this. So if you're using the Axios, you can do it that way. There's also node fetch you can use, or there's a request object you can use as well. But if you look, instead of using .then or async await, just return it from here. Just do return Axios.get users. So just do that.